Welcome back to my channel. I'm Steph. I do reactions to and reviews of queer TV, movies, and books. So if you're interested in watching more of my videos, please consider subscribing. Today I'm going to review and give a recap of the first season of Feel Good. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so Feel Good follows Mae Martin, who is a real person, and follows her new relationship with George, as well as gives a few moments into her life as a stand-up comedian. It actually starts with her doing a new stand-up performance, and honestly, it was a pretty solid set. And George is in the audience of this performance, so it is no surprise when Mae asks, "Anybody single? Give me a cheer." I think that was a very clever way for Mae to find out that George is in fact single. We learned that she has been single for quite some time. I think she hasn't been involved with anyone in the past 5 years. So then after her stand-up set, we see that George and Mae actually meet. The two aren't sure if they were actually on a date or if they were just hanging out as friends. They were both trying to gauge, I think, whether the other person was interested in being on a date or not. And Nick answered that question.
Enjoy your date?
Well, he said it was a date. Yeah. So I guess it is.
Which leads to this somewhat awkward, somewhat hilarious moment.
I've never been on a date with a girl before.
Yeah. I know, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Okay.
Love Mae's response. And then seconds after they figure out that it is indeed a date and they both want it to be a date, they have their first kiss. Notice that high-pitched ringing, which will be a recurring sound that happens throughout the season. And that high-pitched ringing is a good indication that there's either something addicting that Mae is giving into or that she wants to give into. Interestingly enough, this show expands the definition of addiction beyond just the narcotic addiction that Mae is introduced to have. Let's listen to that definition.
So, this group focuses on drug use, but through our discussions, Mae particularly has broadened our definition of addiction to include any behavior which an addict craves, finds relief in, but cannot give up despite the negative consequences it's causing in their day-to-day life.
So with that definition, we are to understand that George is in fact someone that Mae is addicted to. A minute after the kiss, we get the obligatory montage of the progression of their relationship. The montage ends with them moving in together after 3 months, which is definitely fulfilling a lesbian relationship stereotype. But you know what? I get it. You fall and you haul. So yeah, after 3 months, they move in together. Soon, George finds out that Mae is a recovering addict, and Mae tries to minimize this addiction and says nay to NA. Sorry. It's not done yet. She says nay to NA because she says it's NA, not applicable. Anyway, this is met with resistance from both George and her parents, who insist that she goes to NA. She does, where she meets Maggie. We can see even from the first episode that this relationship between George and Mae has its flaws and is perhaps not the healthiest relationship. We see that Mae still has a lot of secrecy when it comes to her past with her addiction, and we also see that George isn't super comfortable with her sexuality yet and hasn't come out to a bunch of people, which actually causes Mae to feel really insecure and nervous. And that about wraps up episode 1. In episode 2, we get this amazing moment.
Are you kidding? I never cry at weddings. I think the whole thing's bizarre. It's so archaic. I hate the rings. The rings piss you off?
The hugging of the mannequin really gets me. They're having this conversation about rings because George has a wedding that she's going to go to, and she is going without Mae. She lies about the fact that she is not allowed to bring a +1, even though she is allowed to bring a +1. This clear indication that George isn't super comfortable with her friends knowing who she's dating. The absence of George in those next couple of days puts Mae into an absolute frenzy. She is not able to think about anything besides George, and when George tells her, maybe wrongly, that she cannot text her or call her at all while she's at this wedding, Mae freaks out. This is one of the first moments, I think, where we see Mae's dependency on George and the unhealthy nature that it's taking on. We even see Maggie comment on this when she says,
Yeah, George is not your entire personality, darling. You got to remember that. Addicts fixate. You got to mix it up.
and while George should not be her entire personality, it does feel in a few moments that she's incapable of thinking about anything else she likes. Mae does name this addiction to George later in the episode when she says,
Whatever it is, cigarettes, our phones, we have habits, so how can we say that we're not addicted? My girlfriend, her name's George, she looks like a fit little squirrel or something. She went away for one night and I lost my mind. It was all the same feelings of craving and withdrawal and relief and obsession. We're just swapping one addiction for another.
I would love to be described as a fit little squirrel, but that's neither here nor there. The episode ends with George coming back, and although the relationship has thus far felt really imbalanced, we see that actually George is feeling somewhat similar to how Mae is feeling when she imagines a proposal.
I miss you so much.
You did?
Yeah, I did. I love you so much. I think I want to get married.
To me?
Yeah.
You want to get married to me?
Yes, I really do. Oh.
The moment we realized that that's not real, I don't know how you felt when that happened, but I was like, good? Why am I rooting for this toxic relationship? I don't know. Something that I need to explore in therapy, I'm sure. And that fake out is sort of how the episode ends. At the start of episode 3, we get this gem of advice.
You can transform a toxic relationship into a healthy one.
And we are left thinking, can you do that? And I think what we realized by the end of the season is that, at least in this case, we can't. In episode 3 is when we start to see that they're having trouble in their sex life. Mae can't seem to orgasm because she doesn't feel comfortable in the relationship. She doesn't feel confident that George wants to be with her forever, or that George is proud of her or proud to be queer. That insecurity translates into their sex life. This trouble goes beyond their sex life when at a party, George clearly is not comfortable introducing Mae as her girlfriend and instead introduces her as a friend. Oh. Out of pure frustration, Mae gives this speech.
Can I ask you something? Did you ever have braces as a kid? Or acne? Did you have acne when you were a teenager?
Okay, can you just calm down?
You grew up rich and white and straight and hot. You won the lottery. So of course you want to dance. You're surrounded by people that want to fuck you. Of course I don't want to dance in front of people that would have bullied me in high school, and you're too ashamed to touch me. If you want me to feel confident, then hold my hand.
After this gut-wrenching moment where Mae puts it all on the table and tells her exactly how she's feeling, along with addressing her privilege, George responds by continuing to deny their relationship to her friends. Now, Mae is not by any means a perfect character. I think that some of us would even at times call her annoying, but I do appreciate her complete honesty in this moment, and I feel for her. I think a lot of us feel for her when it becomes so clear that her mental health is affected by the way others perceive her and the way others have treated her. And we had this amazing quote from Lava/Laura,
Just don't let her shame rub off on you. It'll give you bad posture.
who's giving pretty good advice to Mae. I mean, I think it's coming from a biased place since clearly Laura is low-key in love with her, but I do think that that quote is amazing. In this episode, we see, though, that even though George has been pretty reluctant to come out to her friends, pretty resistant to coming out to her friends, we see that she inadvertently comes out to her friends because she's high on morphine and doesn't actually realize that they're in the room with her. One of the last things that happened in this episode is that Mae takes the oxy from George's hospital room and will eventually come to use that. In episode 4, we get to see a lot more of the relationship between Mae and her parents. It clearly is one with tension and a lot of built up frustration between them. Mae apologizes to her parents, hoping that they will then reciprocate with their own apology for everything that went down when Mae was struggling with addiction. Mae apologizes but does not actually receive an apology in return. This sort of sours the day a little bit, but that's ultimately resolved. One moment that I think planted a seed of doubt in George's head was when Mae's mom told her that Mae doesn't actually love people, she loves the idea of love itself. And she goes after people that are unavailable because she's masochistic. This leads to a conversation between Mae and George, where George asks Mae how she's different from all the other quote-unquote straight girls that she's dated. And this leads to a weird moment where Mae promises she'll never break up with George. I don't know how anyone could make that promise, but Mae makes it pretty confidently to George. George does not provide the same promise back, which I think actually exacerbates a lot of Mae's insecurities. The episode does, however, end with Mae dancing, which is, I think, really important considering earlier Mae said that she wasn't comfortable dancing. That confidence seems to be short-lived though, because in episode 5 we see that she actually takes an oxy pill after George tells her that she's the only girl that she finds attractive. Not anything anyone wants to hear. Meant to be flattering, as Mae says, but in fact, really scary. In episode 5, we also see what I would argue is Mae Martin's best acting performance of this entire series, or season at least, which is this moment.
I'm just trying to be what you want. I just want you to be yourself. I don't think that's really true. It's definitely not what you dreamed of, so.
Heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. It's a very painful moment where Mae expresses to George how insecure she's feeling about the fact that George is otherwise straight. And then a few minutes later, we see that Mae actually takes out her insecurities and frustrations onto the comedy stage when she does her stand-up performance and focuses solely on her relationship with George. Honestly, I would argue that it wasn't really that funny, but it did get her some attention and bigger crowds came to see her after that. So maybe it was because of her honesty in that moment. The unfortunate part though is that George actually does come to support her and goes to the stand-up set to see Mae perform, and is then hit with all of this reality that she did not know about how Mae feels about her and her relationship. George later asks her if she actually makes Mae happy, and Mae responds with, no, not really. So they break up, which makes sense because if Mae is unhappy in the relationship, it does not make sense to stay in it. But it was a very sad moment because, again, even though toxic relationship, I was rooting for them. The episode ends with Mae at Laura's house. And then in episode 6, we see that Mae and Laura actually hook up, only for Mae to call her hookup with Laura a casual mistake. Oof, painful. Maggie, who is Laura's mom, is pissed at Mae because she ruined the progress that Laura and Maggie had been making by having this hookup with Laura. Now Mae in a really dark place, and she no longer has her sponsor who she has grown to love and no longer has a girlfriend. She spirals. She ends up with another person in her NA meetings named Kevin, and they go off and snort some coke and even almost have sex. Luckily, Mae does realize that she is in a bad place, so she calls up her parents who tell her to come home. This would probably be a good place for the season to end, since I think this is exactly what Mae needs, is to go home and to get over all of her addictions. So it probably would have been great if she did go home, but it seems like that's not going to happen. George ultimately does try to win her back, even bringing her mom into the story. I don't know. And while at first Mae is resistant and stands her ground that she needs to go back to Canada and stay with her parents, ultimately they do have sex. The season ends with them in bed right after sex, and we hear that same high-pitched ringing that we hear anytime Mae is using or being tempted by the idea of using. I think this is a very intentional cue for us as the audience to understand that this is not something we should root for, that this is something that's toxic, and that although they might continue into a relationship, we should make sure that we remember that although they're super cute together, this is not the healthy relationship that we need. I appreciate that they did that because I think often these sort of relationships are romanticized because, you know, there's so many ups and downs, all the drama, but obviously they are damaging and not really beneficial in the long run to either of them. So that was my recap / review of season 1 of Feel Good. I am planning on reacting to season 2, so if you are interested in seeing those reactions, please consider subscribing. Leave a comment saying whether you liked the first season and are interested in the second season. I know that I will definitely be watching as soon as it comes out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.